So let's start off with some of the characteristics of the boxwood. It's a broadleaf evergreen. It's an understory tree. It's actually a shrub. Sometimes the common boxwood can grow up large enough to be considered a tree, but for the most part, they're shrubs. And they have a lot of features in them that actually help us out in bonsai because they're shrubs, the way that they bud out and the various ways that we can train them. There are a lot of cultivars and various varieties. Probably the most common ones that we come across are the common boxwood, which is the Boxus sempervirens. This includes English boxwoods and a lot of boxwoods out of the European and Asia Minor type of areas in northern Africa and that type of thing. And there are a ton of them that are over here in our country here. But we also have another type, which is called the microphylla. And this includes the Japanese boxwood, and we got an awful lot of those. They differ the common can actually be a tree, can actually get up to the size of a tree. Most of the microphylla are going to remain shrub size and keep that kind of form. They're a little bit more forgiving from the standpoint of cold and light. Sometimes a common boxwood or an English boxwood can get some color distortion on it, going kind of orange and whatnot when it gets cold. And they're also a little bit more light sensitive. The microphylla can take an acid, or it can also go a little bit on the alkaline. And here's where you get into the compactus. The compactus include the Kingsville boxwood that everybody's heard of with the tiny little leaves and just a really super little tree to work with, especially if you're doing some, what do you call it? Shohin type of trees. Excuse me, I got something in my throat here. Okay, so they are opposite budding. They have waxy leaves, and they have short petioles and internodes. This really sets them up to be a really great tree as far as bonsai is concerned, because you can bring them down in scale so that their leaves, you can have a sufficient number of leaves on a tree to make it really look like a tree in nature. So there are a lot of things that we have in boxwoods that we don't get with other types of trees. You all know that I'm involved with a lot of oak trees, and some of those oak tree leaves are pretty big. You can reduce them down, but you still have something that's fairly big. What we're talking about is something that's about fingernail size as far as the leaves are concerned. Now the flowers that they start to flower sometime in the February and March time frame, and you get this little small fruit on it. It's a little round fruit with a couple of bumps. I've got a picture of it here. And you can see not only the fruit itself, which is that round thing with the three little bumps, but also the leaves. And because they're opposite, some of them, the first ones that you see there go left and right, and then the ones behind that go up and down, and then left and right and up and down. They just alternate all the way down the stem of whatever shoot you're dealing with. One nice thing about this is it looks nice and smooth now, but when they're finally ripened, they actually open up like this, like a big jaw. And they actually break into 3 pieces along those lines of those 3 bumps, and then they throw 6 seeds out. Well, we don't really have to get too far into that, so let's go on to the next portion, which is the fibrous root system that these things have. This is another thing that really makes them nice for bonsai. They don't have that big taproot that you run into with a lot of trees. And they're fairly easy when you're even collecting these things to get them out of the ground, because most of the roots are right down where you can get to them, and you can take a shallow root system and almost transplant it directly into bonsai pots. Sometimes a little bit more, but at least something that's approximating what we're going to do in bonsai. One of the things that people tend to do, though, with the roots is they try to show too many of them. And what happens is that they dry out. If you show the entire circumference of the root, the whole way around the root, it'll tend to dry out. If that happens, they'll probably die, and then you're going to have to create a new root system that's lower than that. So you're going to have to go down farther on the tree in order to find a root system that you can use to give you some nice nabari going out. So try not to expose them too much to the sun. Another nice thing about it is that they have rough bark. Really, in older trees develop a really beautiful bark. The bark that you see when you're first starting off on these is fairly smooth and really kind of nondescript, but the bark as it gets older gets very interesting. Here's an example of a tree that I have that has pretty good bark. I hope the definition is good enough for you to see the actual bark itself and see how it's kind of plated and kind of fissured in between there. So you can get some very old looking trees when you're collecting these, and please preserve the bark, because the bark is a very important part of everything. If it gets wet or if moss gets up into it, a lot of times what happens to that bark is it just flakes right off. It becomes a real problem. Okay, moving on to that, let's talk about growing boxwood. Of course, in nature, we don't even know what they look like, or at least I don't know what they look like growing out in the wild. Every wild thing that I have seen has been, part of a hedge or, in some kind of a backyard situation. So I'm not really sure what they can do. I know that they're very, very easy to adapt to almost any style. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. But once you get it into a bonsai pot, it could be in anything. It could be in rocks in the ground. It could be in all kinds of clay soil, any kind of soil. That it's usually a very forgiving tree from the standpoint of the kind of soil that it's in. And it'll give you good roots even with some bad soil. But once we get it into a bonsai pot, we really have to start watching it because of the control of water and trying to take care of and grow them as efficiently as we possibly can. I start off with a mix that here you see 2 akadama and 1 each of pumice and lava. If you need more moisture in there, you just add more akadama to the point where if you're doing a shohin, for instance, and you're concerned about the amount of soil that's in the little tiny pot with it, what you can do is you can go completely akadama, and that would probably be okay too. Again, we talked about it being an understory tree, and that's why it likes that dappled shade. Usually it's a deciduous tree over the top of it, and it gives it lots of shade and a little bit of filtered sun coming through there. So partial sun is good for it, even pretty strong sun. As long as it's in the morning time, you're going to be just fine. In the afternoon, the late afternoon and whatnot, you can run into some problems with a little bit too much sun, and you might start getting some yellow or some browning out, or the tips, some of the leaves themselves might start to get damaged. In the full winter, because the angle of the sun is so far down, I don't think you have a problem. You can give it full sun and no problems at all. We were talking about the nabari and protecting that. In order to do that, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll get the soil right up to the edge of the root system, and then I'll use a top dressing made out of sphagnum and green moss. That's what that S&G moss is on your screen. The S&G moss is basically using a sphagnum moss, the long grain sphagnum moss, and I use the New Zealand stuff. And I actually put it through I sieve it through my sifter for my soil sifter. And I also do the same thing with the moss. I'll gather moss, at the beginning of the year when it's quite readily available. Right now, you couldn't find it on a bet in my yard or anywhere close to it. So you want to collect that a little bit earlier and set up this top dressing that you're going to use. And I sieve that as well. And sometimes because you're getting a little bit of clay on the back, the backing of the moss when you're taking it off of the ground and whatnot, rather than cleaning that off too much, what I do is I'll put it into a blender. I have a blender that my wife doesn't have to touch, or I don't have to clean out for her. And I actually put moss inside there with water, and I just churn it up, get it all churned up. And then what I do is I add that liquid mixture to the sphagnum moss, and actually it absorbs, that sphagnum absorbs a lot of the moisture. It makes it really easy to put on. I can't tell you how many times that I've been putting moss on the top of a tree and the wind kicks up, because I do almost everything outside. And as soon as I get that moss on there, that sphagnum moss, the wind kicks up and half of it blows away. It drives me crazy. So this is one way of solving that little problem. As far as the watering is concerned, they're not terribly picky about what kind of water that you use, so that anything that you have coming out of the tap, for the most part, you know, big asterisk there if you have really nasty water. But any kind of water I think will do. And it's a good idea to remember that you're going to want to protect it from getting, if it's really shallow, from getting too wet and staying too wet, especially in the rainy season at the beginning of the year. Remember, everything that we're talking about here is as per my San Jose, California kind of climate. So during the summer, we don't have water, but we got some pretty good amount of rain. So when you do get a lot of rain and it's really keeping it very, very wet, one thing that you can do is you can put a little block under one side of the pot and allow the water to drain out one side, and then change that up in a couple of weeks if you got a lot of water coming in storms and that type of thing. As far as feeding is concerned, it's a moderate feeder. You don't have to do too much to it. It can pretty much take everything that it wants out of the soil. A good time to do that is between March and October. And I'm talking probably, if you're dealing with trying to maintain a tree, you're probably using something that's got a low nitrogen content, maybe in the 5 to 7, 10 range, something along those lines. If you're really trying to pump it up and you're trying to develop the tree, you might think about using something that's quite a bit higher, just so that you can get some real active growth going. But once you get it more or less to the point as far as ramification is concerned, and what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to slow that process down. And you don't want it getting long shoots and whatnot. You want it to kind of slow down, give you really nice, tight growth. And too much fertilizer can really deep six that particular idea. As far as pests are concerned, occasionally you're going to get something like maybe the mites, and you can see the mite damage on some of the trees, that little speckle and that off color that you get. You get the same thing in juniper. So, you know, look for the same kinds of things. They're drinking all the chlorophyll out of the cells of the foliage. As far as diseases are concerned, not much really hits it, except you can get some fungal issues, and those are usually because it gets to be so dense that there's no air movement inside, and it's a perfect breeding grounds for fungi. So the very fact that we're cleaning these things out and making them into bonsai a lot of times takes that off of the table, so you don't have too much of a problem with any kind of diseases there.
JT, this is Juan Cruz. I have a question.
Sure.
In some of the boxwoods, I've noticed that they have curly leaves on them. Any idea what that could be?
Sometimes there are a couple.
The new leaves get curly.
The curly leaf on the new stuff that comes out, and they just never open up and flatten out. Okay, that can be from one or two things. It could be again this fungal issue that's going on, and you know, you use something like Cleary's 3336 or something along in those lines, and that should clear up, at least for the new growth. That the growth that already has that isn't going to all of a sudden straighten out. Once it's there, it's there. But another thing that it might be is it might be some kind of insect that is actually stung that. And you see this on a lot of trees where actually they get into a place and they collapse the leaf around them. Most of the time it's not going to be that, or if it is, you're going to see just one or two here and there if it's an insect. If it's kind of pervasive and you're seeing a lot of it, then I would say it's probably a fungal issue. Does anybody else have any ideas on that? Moving on.
Renee's got a question.
Sure.
My question was, I've had lots of problems with fungus in the last few years. And so the signs of fungus on a boxwood would be, what would I look for when I'm looking for fungus?
Okay, so there are a lot of manifestations of what the fungus does. One of which is that it kills the foliage. and it starts to turn it yellow and then brown on foliage that you wouldn't guess would be getting old. Typically on a boxwood, you're going to have the leaves lasting for about 3 years. So for the most part, they stay a reasonable color, and then they change color, and then they drop at some point or another. But I would be looking for something like that. Also, sometimes you're going to get some mildew or yeah, kind of a mildew kind of a situation inside of it. And you can use something like Xerotol to treat that. And that's a contact fungicide. In other words, as soon as it touches it, it kills the fungus. So, you know, that's one way of treating it also. But anytime that you have something like that, I would cut it out. I would cut that portion of the foliage out and then spray it, and then see if it develops again. But again, it's usually, most fungus wants to have a nice moist condition. And if we can change that condition and keep the airflow in it, I think maybe that might help.
Have you actually had problems with fungus on boxwoods?
I can remember a few years ago I had some in there, and one of the things I did treat it with once I got it, I did use the Xerotol on it, and it seemed to do very well. But the clearies will go through the system of the tree, and I think it will do some protection on it. And yes, I have had some problems, and it seems to clear up for the most part. I haven't had one actually crash on me.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
I mean, other than messing up everybody stuff.
Yeah, sorry, JT. I would like to just warn everybody also that they, I think Costco at one point was selling a fungicide that it was made from sesame seed oil. I tried it out on some of my trees. Luckily, it was not my bonsai this time, but it ended up killing a lot of the foliage. And what ended up happening is that it didn't actually mix very well with the water. And so at the very end, you end up getting just pure sesame oil, essentially, and it just burned the hell out of the leaves. So just be careful on what you buy. I would stick to the very better known things like neem oil and things like that if you're going to try to use fungicides as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can use, there are a lot of different oils that you can use, but yeah, but if that's a very bad experience. I'm glad you didn't lose your bonsai off of that one. Okay, so as far as the temperature is concerned, around here, around the Bay Area, you're not going to have freezing temperatures, so you don't have to worry too much about that. Every couple of years, every couple of 4 years, I'll be transplanting the tree. It's not always necessary, but you always want to check the roots. You want to see what's going on with them. When you do take it out of the pot, you're going to notice that there are a ton of roots down there at the bottom, a real mat. And you can cut a lot of those roots out because they're forming a lot of really fine roots that you can use in the new pot or putting it back in the same pot. Also, it is not as critical with this tree as it is with a lot of other trees as to when you do it. Half the time that I have collected boxwood, it's been in the middle of summer, and a couple of times I've gone and actually found boxwoods that are on the side of the road where they just threw them in the gutter. And I've gotten a bunch of those to take. So just because it's in the middle of summer doesn't mean you can't. It's probably not the most ideal time, but you can do some work on that. As far as your bonsai are concerned, I wouldn't do it during the summer. I'd wait until early fall or do it in the springtime or the late winter, as we do most of the transplanting. I do like to thin it out maybe once, sometimes twice, depending on how much growth you get there. It's a good idea to thin these things out because the foliage gets really jammed up. This also helps with that fungal issue that I was talking about before, because if you can get good airflow in there, you're probably not going to have too much of a problem with your trees. So I like to do these either in the May, June timeframe or the September, October, or if you have a real runner, I mean, this thing is growing like crazy, then you might want to do it twice a year. But I think that's probably enough. These things bud back very, very easily. And as far as propagation is concerned, you can take cuttings anytime May through September, anytime during the growing, the normal growing season. You can layer these things, but by far the best thing that you can do is find somebody wants to get rid of their hedge and dig out some trees, because these are usually, like I say, they put these things in 45 years ago as a 1-gallon container, and then all of a sudden they decide after 45 years that they want to change their landscaping and put something else in. And this is free stuff to you. And it's a great activity for the club. So if you get a chance, do that. A branch pattern, the way these things grow, like most deciduous trees, is up and out. Most of the branches at least start up, and they may go down a little bit at some point, but they go up and then they go out towards the exterior of the tree. Remember that the tree grows out if you have branches that, for instance, get out a certain way and then it sends a couple of shoots inside. We don't want to have those. Those are the ones that are going to be a problem in the design of our tree. We probably eliminate those. Also, the boxwood will adapt to darn near anything. Any kind of a style is going to be good for these things. Now I'm going to go through and I'm going to give you some information. This is an interesting book that I got. It's called Boxwood Handbook, and you can get this at the I think it's boxwoodsociety.org, and you can order it right straight through them, and it's about 20 bucks, I think, is something like that. They have another book that's about $110, but you got to be a hardcore boxwood guy to get involved in that. So anyway, if you want to take a screenshot of this this thing, this is what the book looks like, and I'll give it a couple of seconds for you to do that. Okay. This is a picture of this. This is the same actual tree that you saw next to me just a few minutes ago. And this is one that I had collected years and years ago, and I've been developing it over time, and I've developed it kind of like an oak tree, go figure. Anyway, the oak tree is a design that really suits itself very well for a boxwood. If you're looking at the trunk on this thing, you can see the trunk going up most of the way up into the top of the tree, and then it disperses. There are all kinds of secondary branches and almost trunklets, let's say, large pieces that come off of that, as they do in an oak. And as they grow, they can become wider than they are tall. So you get quite a good spread on branches and that type of thing. But also notice that there's a lot of branching inside, that you can see some of the branches as they bifurcate inside the thing. And then most of the foliage is going to be on the outside. When we're developing bonsai, a lot of times what we want to have is we want to have inside branches, but we don't want to have the foliage inside. We want them to start there and to break into a pattern of a lot of different branches as they go out towards the edge of the tree. But most trees, and oak included, will do best if they have good sun, and the sun is going to be captured in that outside perimeter, kind of like the outside of the umbrella of this, and the spokes that go out to it typically don't have an awful lot of greenery on it. It would be too shaded out and sometimes wouldn't grow. That would be on a normal tree. In a boxwood, you can keep it in almost semi-dark, and the darn thing is going to bud inside. It's just a crazy tree. Wish that would happen with a lot of different trees, but that's how this happens. So this is an oak style. This is an upright, very informal and kind of fun tree. This also has that bark that I was showing in way back in the beginning of the program. Okay, this next one, to look at it, that was an upright tree. Now this is getting to be more of a slant type of tree. And this is a pretty good sized tree. This is about 2.5 feet tall. And it gives the feeling of a very tall tree. and with the slender trunk off to the side, and then the main trunk going up, and not a whole lot of movement to it, but it still has a good feeling to it. Each bonsai that you're going to have, each boxwood that you're going to have is going to give you a different feel to it. Each one's going to be different. You can't make a cookie cutter type of tree and make it really work out. You have to kind of go with what the tree gives you and then add a little of your own accent to the whole thing, and it really comes out nicely for you. Anyway, you'll notice the separation in branches, and there are open spots here. These last two trees that I had have actually been cleaned out so that there's quite a lot of room. They've been thinned out a bit. Okay, going on to the next one. This one was Jack Christensen in our club had one that was a kind of a semi-cascade. So I wanted to show what he is doing with his particular tree, having it going off to the side. I would probably empty out some of the foliage pads and whatnot, maybe do a little connection there, but it gives you an idea of what you can do as a semi-cascade. Going a little bit let's go back on that. And just because Bob Begay is probably not here, I wanted to let him know that that is Bob's pot, one of Bob's pots. So there you go. Okay, so the next one is an actual cascade that's going down. So you can use almost any angle, any way of presenting a tree. You can do a bunging, you can do all kinds of things with that. But this is another one of Jack's trees. And so he has the cascading branches going down, and you can develop it whatever way you want, but it really adapts itself very nicely for bonsai in doing it in cascade. So you can do that too. Now this one is a compacta. This is a liam compacta bonsai. And this is a little bit larger leaves than the Kingsville boxwood, but it has really nice form. Again, who would figure that I would make an oak tree out of this? But that's what I did. And this one is about 8 inches tall. So this is about a handspan tall. They really give good detail and a lot of movement within the thing. And as you know, when you see a two-dimensional flat picture of something, you're going, oh, well, that, you know, that's okay. But when you see these trees and you see the depth of it and where the branches are coming out and all the movement in it, it really can change your whole idea about it. So being in person, which is of course how you like to have a presentation or something, but being in person allows you to see that, and your eyes make allowances for all of the different movement in the tree, and it really is a better way of looking at it, but this is the way we have to do it. Okay, this other one, this is a 2-trunk. And so this is a tree that I had taken off years ago. And again, opening up. Most of these trees, if you'll notice, that I try to stop that main trunk from growing all the way up to the top. And I try to get it so that you don't know exactly which one of the little branches is really going to be the apex of this particular tree. And that's what you like to do with a deciduous tree. This is not a pine tree where you're going to have a defined single trunk type of thing going up. You're going to have this kind of breaking out, this kind of diffusion of the branches. A lot of times we think of this, you know, this breaking out. This is what they call a decurrent type of tree, where the initial year your shoot grows out, and then in subsequent years the lateral shoots behind it catch up to it and actually blend into something where you can't tell what the apex is. Okay, this is kind of a fun tree, and this is a raft tree. So as you look down at the base of the tree, you can see the roots that are growing right down there at the bottom. Really interesting type of tree. Some of you in our club have seen this, so I've shown this, I think, a couple of times. And the spread of it and the whole feeling of it. So you can give the feeling of a group. You can do groups with this. You can get the feeling of, like, this is a group planting that's growing out of one base. There's all kinds of things that you can do. It's a very adaptable species, something that you can play with and really enjoy. This last one, you'll notice that this is much thicker and much harder to see through. I haven't thinned this one out. This one is yet to be thinned out. And one of the things that I will be doing is that if you look at the design of the tree, you'll notice on the left-hand side, I've got the good group of branches that are going out. On the right-hand side, it seems to be a little bit short, about halfway down from the apex down to that bottom portion of the branches. There doesn't seem to be something there. So what I'm doing is I'm allowing some of those to grow, and where I may be cutting back on the left-hand side and on the apex and around those areas, I'm going to let those grow so that they can come out, fill out that particular part, and then I'll get into more ramification for that part. So there are various things that you can do at various stages on a boxwood to really help it out. Okay, so let's talk a little bit. The questions about the trees and about growing boxwoods. Anything? Anybody?
No questions yet. You're
Okay.
very thorough. It's easy to understand.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to talk a little bit about branch development. And we're going to do this a little bit step by step. Okay, typically I'll be using on almost any deciduous tree and most of the broadleaf evergreens, I'm going to be using aluminum wire. In this case, the shoots are very pliable for probably, and when it finally sets and really gets hard, it gets very hard. This is extremely hard wood. If you have something that's absolutely rigid, the chances are you're going to break it before you can bend it. So get your movement in there fairly early. Get it, do it as quickly as you possibly can. Now you can bring some branches down a little bit, and you can use guy wires and that type of thing to do that, but it turnbuckles and that type of thing. But it is a good idea to do whatever you can while the shoots are pliable. And what I want to do on a brand new shoot coming off of the trunk, I like to start that initial shoot and allow it to harden out. In other words, you let it grow, and it's probably going to grow out about 6 inches or maybe 7 inches or so if it's a hardy tree, a very, very happy tree. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to probably clean out the bottom so that I can see it a little bit better and I can get my wire on it. And I'm going to put a little bit of wire on the first part of it. Then I'm going to let that set. I'm going to let that set till it hardens in position and actually grows a little bit. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that wire. And then for the rest of that year, I'm just going to let it run. Just let it go that first year. This is to let it thicken up. We want this thing to thicken as much as possible. Here's the illustration that I'm going to use here. Obviously, this is not a big trunk, but this is a good illustration for it. So this is a typical shoot that you're going to see coming off of a branch or off of the trunk. And you'll notice that there are a lot of leaves up and down and all over the place. What I'm going to do first is I'm going to clean that out, and I'm going to take off all those leaves that we had there. These leaves just get in your way, and you're probably not going to be used bottom growing leaves anyway. This is something that actually lets you see into this a little bit better, and it makes it so much easier. So then you put on a piece of wire. You get the wire. You'll notice that I have the wire on only about halfway, maybe even not quite halfway at this point. This is just to illustrate that I was wiring it. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to wire that first part, maybe a little bit past where I have that wire, and put some movement into it. And then with a little extra wire, you're going to want to wire the top so that it's growing up. The more upright you're going to have that top growing, the faster it's going to grow, the speedier it's going to set, and the happier the entire shoot is going to be as far as growing it. And that's what this looks like. So I put some wire on. You'll notice that there are quite a few leaves still in that area that's been wired up. And I want those to completely grow out and just get as healthy and happy as they possibly can and thicken up. That's the important part of that first year. Okay, then we get into second year. Excuse me. Okay, so January or maybe early February, but January, let's say, I'm going to cut that long straight portion off. because I've let it go. I've let the energy get back into the tree and really set in an area that I can use it for the next year, for the next growth spurt. So in January, I'm going to cut that back at the end probably of whatever movement I put into that particular branch. Then I'm going to let the shoots on that grow out, because what's going to happen is, because when you actually cut back, you're going to get a pretty good push, probably more than one, probably 3, 4, maybe even 5 shoots that are actually going to come out at that point. The biggest shoot is probably going to be right on the end, but you probably are going to get a few that are back from that you can use. And I want to keep 3 of those shoots once they have hardened out. I want to have one for the back branch, a top branch, and a front branch. Now, normally when you're designing a tree, you're thinking of, a 1 leader and 1 side shoot. In this particular case, I'm trying to get a 3-dimensional tree started fairly quickly. And the best way that I can think of doing that is to get it so that you have it going not only to the front and the top or upper branch, but that you also get something going towards the back to give you depth. So in this particular case, what I would do is I would keep 3 of those shoots, and I would wire those out the same way that I wired that first year growth. And I would put some movement into it, and then I would let that set until that has spent probably about 6 weeks to 2 months. At that time, I take off the wire, because I probably don't need it at that point. But now we change a little bit, and I'm going to cut to 2 leaves. Cut to 2 leaves on each one of those little branches. So now you're going to start that 2-leaf kind of thing. And when I say 2 leaves, I'm talking about 2 sets of leaves, because that will give you actually 4 buds, but you can decide which one of those 2 buds at any given point you're going to use to give you a little bit of a back and forth type of feel for the particular branch. So you continue that out, and you repeat that particular thing until October. And then you don't cut it back at that point. You just let them run and let them get as much growth as you possibly can, and they'll thicken up and they'll set really well at that point. Year 3 and out, you continue that type of thing. But a lot of times, to start off with, you're just going to cut it back to the 2 sets of leaves, let it harden, pinch, cut, and keep on repeating that all the way through. One of the things is, you get it more and more ramification, you're not going to let it harden. You're going to start pinching it when they first get out. This will allow you to get the inner nodes a little bit closer than what they would be if you allowed it to grow out. You're going to get less growth if you pinch it when it's a young succulent type of growth. You're going to get a much better, or much less of a response than if you let it harden off, get energy, and then cut it back. Then you get a big response off of that. So does anybody have any questions about that?
I do, JT.
Yeah.
So what in the first year, if the branch isn't as thick as you want it, do you just let it keep growing?
Well, it's going to continue to thicken as you go. Now, it could be that you could let that go, and yes, you could just let it thicken out, or you can leave that on there and just keep the tip growth. In other words, a few leaves at the tip, so that it continues to grow out, and that will thicken the entire branch. Remember, it's going to thicken all the way back on that branch if you do it that way. Otherwise, by starting to get more growth that's in a little bit closer, you're going to get more of a taper type of situation, as opposed to that singular type of growth if you let the tip grow.
Okay.
Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I got Tong, you didn't have
I did have a question.
Okay.
JT, could you go back one slide to the
this?
the 3, when you have the 3 years outline?
Yeah.
Okay, so for year 2, the first thing you have is January, February, cut back to the desired length. How much time is there between that and harden and keep 3 shoots?
Okay, in January and February, that is when your new shoots are going to come out anyway. So you're going to get new shoots probably almost immediately because they start coming out in the February, March timeframe.
Oh, I see. And then you let those new
In
shoots
other words, you
harden?
haven't done anything at the very beginning of the year. You've just let, that's last winter's growth.
Mhm.
And then what you do is you leave that and let the energy get into that, into the entire thing there. And then you cut it back in January, say.
Mhm.
And then at the normal time when the shoots are coming out, when the new buds are coming out, they'll come out back farther, you know, where you have that wired area. And that's when they will start to form on the wired portion of the new branch that you're building.
Okay, I think I get it now.
And it'll come out pretty quickly. Any other
Okay.
questions?
Thanks a lot, JT.
Okay.
I don't see any more questions. It's just
Okay,
good
so
stuff.
this is the branch development, this particular slide that I have here. If you look at the upper right sketch that I made on this one, this is actually at the beginning of that second year. You can see where the movement is, and you're kind of determining that you can get 3 buds that are going to come off, and you cut that area right, you know, the straight area, because new shoots always come out straight. Unless you have a Harry Lauder's walking stick or something, almost every shoot that you're going to see is going to come out straight. It's only after it's beaten up and the wind gets it and the other branches interact and all kinds of other stuff happen that you start getting that movement. And the movement that you get off of a tree takes years and years to develop. That's why we wire trees, because we're actually compacting time when we do that. We're actually putting years into just a couple of months to get the kind of movement that we have. Because each one of those bends that you see in a large tree is a matter of a lot of different new rebuddings every year, every season, and changing the angles, going off at different angles, and it gives you that kind of winding type of growth pattern. We try to do that with wire real quick. Okay, so that first one, that top one, is exactly what I was talking about. That's the start of that second year. The one below that is many years down the line where you've developed out, and this is a side shot, by the way, where you've developed a back branch, your upper branch is going up, and then this front branch comes around. If you look at the illustration that's over on the left-hand side, this is a from above type of look at the branches where you've developed that branch out, both back and the front, and the top comes up. And so you're actually building kind of a large pyramid of a branch that is coming out from that one piece that you started before. And keep in mind, you keep on doing this on a shohin tree, and if you only advance maybe during the year, say an inch or so, it only takes 3 or 4 years before you're 3 or 4 inches out on that one branch. You put one on the other side and all of a sudden you're 6, 7 inches out. And so you have to keep it compact. You have to keep everything close in as much as you possibly can. We'll talk about that a little bit later. So is that pretty clear? Have I lost everybody?
We're all here.
Okay, okay.
We're all here. It's very clear.
Okay. Now we're going to talk a little bit about thinning, and I discussed this before, and we're going to try and do this once or twice a year. Probably once is enough, but sometimes, like I say, if you get a real grower, you're going to have to clean it out a little bit more often. Okay, so you want to thin inside that foliage. The inside foliage, just from a health standpoint, keeps most of the fungal issues off the table, and you're not going to have too much of a problem. So they're, like I say, they're pretty tough plants, and they'll take care of themselves as long as you take care of them. Okay, so you're going to want to clean off as much as possible the bottom foliage and those open crotches. I'm going to go to a picture that I did. This is one of the, I think this is one of the small boxwoods that I did. I'm not sure. It's one of the boxwoods that I did, but this is an overhead view. And on the left-hand side, you'll notice that this is a before I even started, this is exactly how it looked down there. There's a lot of foliage in there. You don't see anything in there. There's nothing open, only an occasional little look into the background or the white piece of paper that I have down at the bottom there. In the one on the right, you'll notice that there's a whole bunch of diatrus, a whole bunch of junk on the bottom. That's what I took off of that leaf. So the volume of what I took off is fully half of what was in there probably. And it's opened it up quite a bit. And by doing so, you actually show the branches where the branches start. So often we get a little confusion if we have inside foliage in there. You can't see where those branches start, and you just kind of think of this as being a big ball. It's a great big undistinguished ball, and it's just a mess. And and again, this is my way of doing it. So what I would say is, if you want it to open up and you want to be able to see all of these things very well, you want to get that bottom growth off of there and a lot of the other inside stuff that is coming off of the crotches and the inside of branches and whatnot, and clean that off, and you'll have a much prettier, much nicer tree, and actually healthier, and you can actually see it grow, and it gives you a lot of satisfaction to get that done. That being said, it takes time. This is not for the faint of heart. You got to put a little time into this thing. Okay, going back to that other thing. What we're trying to do is we're trying to create small and ramified and complex branches. So it's not just making a great big one pad type of thing. If we have a pad, what we'd like to do is we'd like to break it into sub pads so that it looks more complex. That complexity makes it look so much larger than having just one great big array of foliage. So try to do that. And this is just my own little note. You have a measuring device on your hand. My thumbnail is about 3/4 of an inch from side to side. My pinky nail is about 3/8 of an inch, so it's about half the size. And my hand span is roughly 8 inches. So when I'm trying to figure out, where I want branches, how far I want them to go out, where I want the internodes to be and how large they want to be, at least because I'm using my right hand with my scissors or whatever it is, and my left hand is usually in the foliage, I have those in my eyesight, and I can actually see what the difference is, what a 3/4 inch internode would be, or what a 3/8 inch internode would be, because that information is right in front of me. You might try it. It's something that you can play with yourself. Okay, now the reason that we're doing this, and I'm calling it a virtual demonstration, it's part that, but it's also part I'm going to be working on the tree, and you'll see me doing that. But because of this kind of situation that we find ourselves in, we can't do this live, and if I do too much movement while I'm working on the tree, everything garbles up as far as the shot is concerned. Anything that's still is okay, but once you start doing some movement and your hands are moving and you're actually working on the tree, everything gets to be mushy. So one of the suggestions that I made was, how about I start the tree and we'll continue on from that as we go through it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the initial parts of doing this particular tree, and we're going to look at those. And once I get to the last slide, then we're going to break for a few minutes, and we're going to, I think Renee has a meeting, a couple of minutes meeting or something like that. After she's finished with that, and I think it's going to take about 10 minutes or so, then we'll come back. I'll show you the tree as it is today, and we'll start from there and we'll do some work on it. But I also want to be able to field questions. So we may not finish everything on it, but we may get it into a form that you can recognize as what I'm trying to put together here for the demonstration. So with that being said, let's go ahead and start the virtual. Okay, this is the piece that I'm actually working on. This is the tree that I'm working on. You can see that it's about 16 inches or so, which is 2 hand spans. And it's about 16 inches, and it has a large trunk over on the right-hand side, and then there's some smaller trunks that you can see over on the left. Again, a flat image doesn't give you everything that you could glean from this thing if you were actually here, but at least you can see that. Okay, this is a picture of the other side, and you can see the large trunk now is on the left-hand side, and the slanted trunk is going up on the right-hand side. What it doesn't show you is that that big trunk only goes up as far as you can see the new foliage starting. Everything above that is dead. So that isn't going to be the tree. I finally determined that that just isn't going to hack it. So we're actually going to go back to that first and use this as the front, I feel, and then use this as the front. Now, here's the Nabari. You can see the Nabari on the bottom of the trunk right here. This is something that we can use, and we can plan on actually improving that as it goes along, depending on how much soil we have there and how we induce those roots. But it should be fairly easy. You'll also notice that I have a line drawn across the big trunk. That's where I'm going to cut this baby off. I made that decision a while back, and that's what we're going to do there. But I just wanted to kind of give you an idea of what I'm looking at. Like anything, before you work on these trees, you want to make sure that they're healthy and that they're secure in the pot. You want them firm in that pot so that things aren't wiggling around and you're breaking up roots as you're working on the rest of the tree. So those things being said, then you get into the idea of, okay, you look into a new tree and what do you got? You got this impenetrable chaos of foliage and tangled branches. So what I would suggest doing is start the styling process anyway by cleaning out the tree. Now, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll start off by getting into the tree and I'll be removing all of the dead foliage. And this includes dead shoots and small stubs and things like that. If you've got larger stubs in there, you might want to hang on to them in case you want to use them as a gin or some kind of a feature within the tree. So there's a time that, if it's large enough and it's not just going to get in your way when you're putting wire on, you might want to hang on to it, at least for the moment, to see what you can do with it. Okay. Then what you want to do is you want to clean off all of the bottoms of the branches, just like I did on that first illustration. Took off all the leaves that were coming off of the bottom. And then sometimes, every so often, you're going to see shoots that are not moving out from the core of the tree, but a whole bunch of them are going out, and then all of a sudden this one goes back into the tree. And most of the time I'm going to be taking those off too. They're just going to be counter to what I want to develop as far as the tree is concerned. And unless there's some real cool feature about it, it's gone. Okay, so we take those out. Now, another thing that you're going to want to do is you're going to want to clean out all the crotches of the tree. The crotches of the branches and whatnot, a lot of times you're going to get new shoots and new foliage that are coming right out of that. So you're going to want to clean those out. A lot of this can be done by hand. This can be actually picked off. And this particular variety of tree, and when you're dealing with a boxwood, for the most part, you can do a lot of hand plucking on these things. If you find that you're plucking this thing and you're losing the shoots that come out from that area, then you start using the scissors. But for the most part, if it's a real healthy tree, it's probably going to allow you to pluck those out with your thumb and forefinger. So don't worry too much about that. It's a pretty good tree to work on. Anyway, you want to clean out the crotches of the tree unless it happens to be a collected tree or it's an older tree where all the foliage is just out on the tips. And you want to use that crotch growth as actually what you're going to be building the tree off of. You see this a lot in junipers and whatnot, where you have this gangly stuff out at the very tips, and yet you have a couple of little buds and shoots that are coming out in the crotches. Hang on to those. Those are like gold to you, because this is where you want to start building your tree. You don't get really good back budding on something that is 2.5 feet away from the trunk. It's just too old to really give you reliable back budding. So if you have those crotch type of branch growth, under those circumstances, hang on to it. Also, you want to take basal leaves. These are the ones that in a boxwood, when you cut back to a couple of leaves, then 2 shoots come out at that point, 1 on each one of the leaves. And that's sort of the leaves that are left. The base of the shoot that comes out is actually on the outside. It's not in the crotch, it's on the outside. So you can take those off as well. And then anytime that you have multiple shoots coming off at the origin of a branch, you typically want to keep one branch that you're going to use for your design, and you might keep a second one just as a backup in case you're not really sure about it. But any more than that is just going to weaken the growth on the branches that you do want to develop. So those are the things that you're going to want to do, and those are the things that I was doing on this particular tree to start off with to get it into the position so that we can go on from here. Now, it's a lot of work, but it's well worth it. You know, while you've been doing all this recon mission into your tree, your eyes and fingers have been gathering all kinds of useful information. You know, you found the dead branches, but you've also found, if there are any, some damaged branches. You might want to find out about that, you know, and this is true in junipers or whatever you're in. If you've got a small crack or something that's weakened that branch and you don't know about it, and you go ahead and try and wire that up and bend it right there, a lot of times you can break that branch right off. So it's one of those things that you really got to pay attention to. Also, you're looking for the flexibility of the branches. How old is this? How much flexibility do I have? What can I do with this particular branch? And then you're also looking for things like unusual features. You know, you might find some really cool, maybe a hole in the whorl or whatever you want to call it in the interior of the tree, or you might find some really good shari that you want to make as a feature, and you might want to feature that by opening it up so people can see it from the outside and really be drawn inside into your tree. Always look for these little things that are individual to each one of these trees. You're also looking for branch patterns, something that you can use to design this tree. And lastly, what you're looking for, maybe not lastly, but for the most part, you're looking and kind of categorizing what you're doing here. And you're deciding, okay, I'm going to keep this branch, and I'm probably going to eliminate this branch. I'm going to keep this one, eliminate, yada, yada, yada. I would suggest using some kind of a memory guide in that. Just from my own experience, I need it. What I use is some little clips made out of pipe cleaners, colored pipe cleaners. And I mark the branches with these. If you don't mark this out, you get to the top of the tree and you forget what you've been doing. I mean, it's very easy for me to forget what I was doing otherwise. Okay, also remember that during this the hand procedure that we were talking about, you want to do it safely. Foliage usually grows up towards the sun, and young foliage is succulent and tender. If you jam your hands down into it, you'll most likely snag and damage the foliage. So to stop that, what you can do is you can actually bring your hand upward from below the foliage, and you slide it in the direction of the growth so that you don't cause this kind of damage. It's just something that shows care for the tree, and it really can preserve something that maybe it could be the one part of the branch that you really need in order to make it sing as a bonsai. So take care of your tree and it'll take care of you, as they say. Okay, so now we're going to go into what we've done so far. Okay, this is the tree that we have, and this is as far as I've gotten at this point. You'll notice that I'm using those yellow pipe cleaners to show which ones I'm trying to keep. And then I'm using the red ones to show the ones that I want to eliminate. This is just really simple. They're easy to put on, easy to take off. It's a real simple way of doing it, and it's cheap, real cheap. Okay, so what I've done is I've cleaned out the bottom. You can see that most of the foliage is gone. You'll notice the right-hand side looks like nothing happened. That's because on the right-hand side, nothing's happened. I haven't cleaned it out. I haven't done anything to it, but it gives you an idea of where we started and what happens after that cleaning process. Okay, so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to show you the back of the thing, and then you know, some of the upper branches where I put the little pipe cleaners. Now let's take a look at that bottom portion, which was down at the lower left-hand side of the trunk of the tree. There were some old cuts that were made in there, and these are old stubs that were way out there. You can see in the center of the screen how that dry one is just a flat cut, completely flat. And the one that's underneath that is also there. It looks like there's bark there, but that's actually a branch that was taken off years ago. I have no idea who did it or how they did it, but that's one of the pruning cuts that they made. So one of the things I want to do is I want to take care of that while at the very beginning of this. So because it was old and it was easy to break off, I just use a pair of pliers to do that. Sometimes you have to use a Dremel tool, but I'd rather use something that gives it more of a natural thing. Since I'm not going back to live tissue in this particular case, I'm trying to create something that's going to be a feature on the tree, but doesn't look like it was man-made. So that's where we're going on this. So I've taken off some of that part of it, and I've left some of the rest of the branch alone, just so that you get a feeling of the flow going into it. Now the next one that I'm doing, because I have some branches over there, I'm going to be doing some wiring. Now you remember in that illustration that I was talking about, what I wanted to do was I wanted to, on a brand new branch, I wanted to have an upward growing branch. I wanted to have one going out to the back and one to the front. And that's what I've created with this particular branch series right here. I've got some that are coming to the front, some that are going to give me some backfill, and then some that are going to give me a little rise in that branch so that we can go up and out and into it. This is what I'm trying to create, and this is what you can do with the wire. This allows you to put a little bit of movement, which adds years to the tree, and as it grows, it's going to look more and more natural the older it gets. Okay, now we're going up into that second branch area, and I've got the left-hand branch all taken care of. Just under the big trunk that you see there on that same branch is a branch that's going out to the back. Because of the way the photo was shot, it just doesn't show that particularly well, but at least you get an idea that there is something wired back in there. And now we're cutting out to the top of the tree, and I've wired a couple more. Again, they're almost invisible to us at this point. But I've taken care of that lower portion of the tree on the left-hand side, and then this final one shows you how I've opened up the top. If you'll notice the difference between how everything is arranged on the top as opposed to how it was in the last photo, right back here, it's kind of a mess here, and here it's much more organized. This is about where we are right now, and this is where we're going to sort of stop. But one thing I wanted to show you was that the uppermost yellow one that I had there, I now have a red and a yellow together on that particular branch. And the reason for this is I've gotten up to this part of the tree, and I've seen where I can make an apex that's a little bit lower than what that branch would give me. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with that. I tend to think that probably I will take that off. I will actually remove that and not keep that, so that I can keep the apex a little bit lower and then build out from there so that it becomes fuller and fuller with more ramification and more taper going out towards the tips. So I think that's probably where we're going to go. Are there any questions up to this point?
And just one question. When you chopped off the main trunk, you chopped it at that point. So any reason why not little lower, why not little higher? Like if we are making a sherry out of it?
Yes, the reason I didn't want to do it too much higher is because I didn't want to spoil the look of the trunk there. The reason I didn't do it any lower is because I wanted to have some feature. If you cut something on absolutely flush, then it kind of means you're trying to get it to heal over, something that would actually heal over. That's going to take years to heal over. It could, but what I want to make is a little feature down there. I don't want to hide the fact that that was there. I want to give a reason for it and maybe a little story involved in it. When you're doing any kind of carving on there, you need some kind of relief. You need to have a foreground and a background. And if you're absolutely flat, you lose that ability to make it a three-dimensional type of gin or feature that you're going to have there. And that's basically why I cut it off where it is. Anything
Okay,
else?
thank you.
I mean, it's up to you. You can do it any way you want.
I love your idea of the pipe cleaners. That's great.
Oh yeah, and they're so simple.
Yeah.
And they work real well. So anybody who wants to swipe that idea, go for it. Is there anything else?
You're covering it so well. We don't have any questions right now.
Well, okay. At this point, I guess, Renee, somebody's gonna, Big Brother is gonna take over and we're gonna cut away to commercials or something. I'll be back.
Great job. Thank you very much, JT. Yeah, I will. I'm gonna. Renee, turn your camera on.
Can you hear me, Dodie?
Yeah, do you want to put your camera on or no?
Yeah, you have to stop share.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
What, stop share?
Yeah.
You can do that also, Dodie.
Okay, I just did it.
Thank you. Your camera's not on. Renee, your video's not.
Unmute.
I unmuted you, or I asked you to unmute. There.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Anyway, we're going to have just a quick little business meeting here, just kind of get caught up on resume the program. We can go back to him.
Excellent. Great. Here he is.
Okay, let me see if I can get this thing zeroed in.
It looks pretty good.
Trying to get the top. Come on, baby. Okay, so a lot of times when you're developing a tree, are we on this thing?
Yeah, we're on. Everything's good.
Okay.
You sound great.
Okay, so whenever we work on a tree, a lot of times again, that confusion gets in there and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do. If you change the angle of the tree, it sometimes really helps to get your idea of what that tree is going to be. Just because it was planted a certain way in a pot doesn't mean that it has to be like that all the time. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up the camera a little bit and I'm going to show you what I use to change the thing. I'm going to pan down to it. And this is basically another pot, the bottom of which, what I'm pointing to right now, is a sandbag. And I lean the tree against it so that it is at the angle that I want it from, so that when I'm designing the tree, I can actually see how it's going to look at the angle I want it. So essentially, this is the angle that I want this tree, a little bit canted off to that side, and this is how I was looking at it. Okay, one of the things that I wanted to do here, first of all, these are the infamous pipe cleaners. And you can get these cheaply at any Dollar Tree or any craft store. You're going to find a whole bunch of them. I like to use the yellow and the red because they really show off in the green of the tree, and it's easy for me to find them. So it's something that I use quite a bit. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this tree. This is the branch that I was talking about before. Let's see if this is helpful or whether this is stupid. Okay, pointing at this, this is what I'm looking at, is this one with the yellow and the red that are together up there. And what I have kind of decided as I'm looking at this is that that's going to have to go. That I need to develop those at a smaller height so that they can build out from that point and not just go up as a single leader. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this baby off. Okay, and retrieve my little bits there. And then there are a couple of other ones that I have decided because this is now going to be the crown. If you look at the wave of the red ones in here, you can see that if I cut down here, I'm going to have what looks like about the outline of a tree. So a lot of this has got to be eliminated. And so I'm going to take it back a little bit at a time and see what I can do about getting the tree a little bit more under control. Got a little branch there. Take that one out. Something out in here. Probably just cut that. I'm not going to cut that one back yet. I want to take this off. That's an inside type of branch. And then on the back, you'll notice that I have a large piece that's coming out here. Now this is because I can see into this tree and you probably can't. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull the, oh, there's where the camera head is. Okay. There, I think you can see the, yeah. Anyway, there's a little red piece in there.
We can
So
see
this one's
it.
going to go. Okay, maybe I don't need to explain everything that I'm doing. Anyway, I'm cutting back where I think I should be. I'm taking off quite a big piece at that point. Okay. This one's coming out quite a ways. This one, I think we can eliminate the upward growing part. Also, when you cut off the main stem here, you're going to two smaller pieces, so you get a certain amount of taper reduction every time you do that. That's always good. Okay, then I have this one. I have a piece that's quite large here, but I have some branches just behind this where I'm going to be doing the cutback. So I'm going to go ahead and do that right now. Eventually, we're going to get this kind of cleaned out. Now I'm going to do just some basic cutback on the branches. I'm going to be taking off a few of these pieces, like this one, and just cutting back to some form. Don't need all of this length at this point. I can do this much shorter. And I can take some of these off also as they get out a little farther. Do I need that kind of a spread? I don't need this one here to be as long as that. I want it to conform in here and I want it to actually start from farther back. So even this one that is out a little bit farther has a nice little bud that's right here. And I'm going to cut that off. I'm going to take this guy off also, probably from a little farther back in. Now I'm going to follow this form going down here and I can eliminate some of these just to get it into the form that I wanted. Now it was suggested to me by a few people that instead of going to all this trouble and doing all of this work on it, why don't you get your hedge trimmers out and just jam down on it? Well, then you get what you put into it, which is not much. You're cutting across all kinds of things from the foliage all the way to ripping up branches where you don't need to. So it's better to take your time and actually get some of these things out, taken care of. And keep them a little, and you can go a little bit shorter than you think you have to be. Oh, I found a little dead stuff in here. Something that's coming from the inside. We were talking about branches that come to the inside and actually go into, let's see if I can get real close on this. Forgive me if I'm goofing this up. I'm reading the picture here. Okay, see this little piece?
That looks good.
See this one?
Okay.
This one that I just moved?
Yeah.
Okay, that's growing back into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that. If it's going back in, it's fighting. It's fighting the whole design. So I'm going to put this down. And go ahead and cut that out. It just is in the wrong place, wrong time, and clean out that entire piece there. Here's another piece that, well, no, that was just laying there. Okay, so I'm going to go around the tree, and I'm going to take care of some of that outward foliage that I don't need. And then I'll get into specific areas and decide what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep it much shorter.
JT,
Yes.
the branch above where you just were, it looks like it bends to the right. No, keep coming front. Keep coming to the front of the tree where you were. Wow. Yeah, that branch right behind your hand. It looks like it bends. No, above it.
This one.
That one, yeah.
Okay.
Can that be bent differently, or is that how you like it? Or
No. That can be bent differently. What I'm doing is I'm going to an outline at this point.
okay,
What I want to create here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a form from the inside, and I'm actually going to try and put a few pieces of wire on it. Like, for instance, here's another one that's growing in towards the core of the tree. Let me just...
I didn't know if it was just too.
This one is going towards the core. If you look at it from this side, you can see that it's actually going inside, in back towards the trunk of the tree. So those are things that you're going to want to get rid of. The one that you were looking at, when I sit down, I'm going to get a better look at it, you know, as to what we're actually going to do about it, and whether whether we're going to do anything about it, or whether I leave it the way it is, or whether I take it out. But I'm going to be able to see it a little bit better when I get down there. Okay, this one could be bent out, but do we need that? Do we need something right there? And I think we do. We took out a large branch that was right in this area, and we want to bring this one over a little bit. So there's going to be some wiring in there, some larger pieces of wire that, and we're not talking big wire in this tree. This isn't a huge tree for that. So I'm going to take off one of the ones that I had on there, go grab my wire. And actually, before I do that, I wanted to do something that, do a little bit of cleanup on one of these branches just to kind of show you what we were doing. And I have a little prop here. See if I can get it put together. Okay, if you look at this, here's where it is.
Perfect.
Okay, so you see this branch here. And let's consider this being the top of the tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean things out like this piece, which is just a dead little stub. I'm going to take off items that are on the bottom here. Again, you're probably going to get seasick if you watch this because everything is shaking. But I want to take care of a lot of the downward growth here. And notice how these are coming off nicely. That means that this is a pretty healthy piece and it's not going to be a problem. Anywhere where there's, like right in here, you want to clean out this crotch area that's right in here. Can you see that, or do I have that?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, that little area there are a number of leaves that are right around in that area. So I'm going to take at least a 1/4 inch out over here, so that you actually can see the branch coming off of another branch. This is important because this shows that it's really a tree, that you're not just dealing with something that's a puffball. So you want to be able to see these things as they're coming up. Now, we were talking about at the base of a tree or at the base of a branch. Okay, here's a good example. We were talking about basal leaves. The two basal leaves that I see right
Move it in more. Yeah.
Okay.
No, well, I'm sorry, I said the wrong
Okay,
way.
I got it.
Yeah.
I'm trying to, yeah.
I know.
So this is a shoot that came up, and this is a shoot that came up. This is a basal leaf. This one is a basal leaf. So we're going to take those two off, this one and this one, because they're right at the base, but they're on the outside there. So I'm going to take that one off and that one off. Clean that up. So now you can see this crotch area.
Mm-hmm.
Ah.
Yeah. We can see it. It's good.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, that's what I'm doing there. What you want to do is you want to also stare down the length of this. And if there are leaves that are coming out, you want to take the ones that are actually straight up on the branch. So you're taking not only the bottom ones, but most of the top ones too, leaving the side ones to be kept for the design of the branch. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off these tops as well as the bottoms. And anything that's coming up. It's amazing that these are so strong that you can pull these things off and not cause any damage to it. But that's just because it's a boxwood. You try this with some of my oaks, and you're going to pull the entire new shoot that's underneath it along with it. So this is something you can do on a boxwood. You can't do it otherwise. So I'm going to clean out this interior area. Now there's a good chance that we're going to get new leaves in here anyway. You know, a repeat of some of the pieces that are in there. So now what I'm getting to the point where you can see the bottoms of these branches. Now I'm not going to wire this thing because it's going nowhere. It's a dead piece, but at least you can see how you clean this thing out. You take your time, and as you're doing it, you're learning about it. You're getting information about.
Lower it a little bit, please.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
But you're
Perfect.
learning getting a lot of information about this thing, and that's what's cool about it, is that you get quite a bit of feedback.
Yeah, this is good.
Okay. I'm not going to take it to its logical conclusion, but I'm going to clean out quite a bit. So you can see the bottoms of these branches. Okay, yeah.
Uh-huh.
See the bottoms of it, and that's what you want to see. And you want to also see where the foliage comes out on the tips of it. So these are the areas that you want. In this particular case, I could cut this one back, and I'll just do a little cut back on it, and without doing any wiring. And we'll just make a nice rounded area here. Let's do it side to side right there. Okay, so now you've got a branch there.
That looks good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to get the angle exactly right. But if you look at this, you can see, yeah. So this is it, with this being the bottom of the branch, and this is the top of the branch. And actually you can see as a side view on this, where it slants down to the tip. And this is how you're going to be developing, you know, if you're doing, you know, large branches and whatnot, you use the branching that you have and you just complete this entire piece. It really works very nicely. And, but because we've got other things to do on the tree, I'm going to go back to that. Now, if there are questions about your trees, you know, we're going to get to that point. If people have specifics that they want to ask, you know, let's make sure that we get their questions answered on that.
Yeah. When would you like them to start asking? after you do some
As
wire?
I'm doing this, I'm not going to give you much of a narrative. I'm just going to be doing it.
Okay,
So they can ask me a few questions and then I can,
okay. Well, Kitty's got a question. I'm gonna unmute her.
okay.
Kitty, unmute yourself.
I'm glad I'm not the only one who has a problem with this.
Oh, we all do, believe me. Kitty, you look at your computer screen. I'll ask you to unmute.
Got it?
There you
Okay.
go. Now you could ask your question.
Well, I was going to ask it after a while, I was going to get in line.
Oh, you're the first.
Oh, well, I'll wait a while still.
Okay, then go ahead and mute yourself again and you pop in later.
I've got some questions on my tree.
Yeah, you can ask your questions on your tree if you wish.
Well, I have to show him the picture. So
Okay,
let's finish this.
so you need to share your,
Let's finish this tree.
okay. Okay, well then
Okay.
mute yourself and pop back in later. Kathleen, I'm gonna unmute you.
Okay, then I'm just going to work on the tree and get it, that seems to be a problem. So what I'll do is I'll just work on this tree and
Okay,
get it going to a certain point. And I hope I don't lose too many people, but this just takes time. You got a lot of time to.
well, Kathleen's got a question for you, I think.
Well, actually, I was going to share my screen. Is that okay? I have a question about an oak, John.
Okay.
Okay. So I took this little 50-second video. What it is that you'll notice a bunch of the branches are long and all of the growth was way out on the tips. But now it is starting to develop little teeny leaves inside here. If I can.
This looks like a valley oak, is that right?
Yeah, and you see how inside here are you able to see that?
Yes, I'm
Circled it
following
with the
the
red.
cursor.
Okay, and now let's see. How did I guess?
What
I
is
came
that?
off of-
What are we
Well, here, I was trying to show that these little leaves inside, that they're way close to the trunk. Some small stuff starting to grow in and get little closer internodes.
Yeah.
But the long branches, and I didn't know, am I supposed to cut those longer branches off, or the thing is going to backbud all the way, or what do I make
It'll
of
do.
that?
Okay, so you're talking about backbudding on the oak, and what I
Yeah.
found is that you have to be a little bit careful of the deciduous oaks, especially the blue oaks and that. And one thing that you can do is you can cut back, as long as you have some green, you can cut back to that green to get it to backbud a little bit. Now you're feeding this, I take it, and you're being aggressive from that standpoint.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I would do is I would cut it back to the green. All of that stuff that's starting inside, you want to hang on to, because that's difficult to get, and you're just fortunate that you at least have some of it started back in there. But you need to get that growth going back in. Now, I don't recommend, certainly on something like this, that you defoliate. There are times when you can defoliate a tree, but usually that's when it's reasonably full to start off with, and it's really healthy. And I'm talking about the deciduous oaks here. I would suggest cutting back as long as you have some green growth back in there, and trying to get it incrementally back on the branches. At the same time, I would be getting those interior branches, or the new growth that's coming out. And as soon as it gets hard, in other words, it hardens off, then doing a little bit of movement with it and not really taking it back. In other words, you don't want to be pinching it back to 2 leaves or anything. What you want to do is you want to get it to grow solidly, at least for a couple of years, so it gets towards the exterior of the tree, because you may abandon those long ones that you have right now in favor of the ones that are growing from the inside.
Okay, that's what I
Makes sense.
wondered. Yes, it does. That makes sense. Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else have questions about their trees? I'm
Seeing-
sorry, I'm not going to say your name right. What,
No problem.
Brett?
This
Yeah,
is
go ahead.
Yadi. Yeah. So, JT, you are giving a very useful, like helpful insights on the shoot of this boxwood. So, but looking at the tree, it looks like old tree in a small pot. So, can you share some insights or tips on like collecting this kind of material, and any tips or and what time and what things we should take care?
Oh, okay. So this is a collection type of question?
Yes, or specifically, like if we look at this, is it a collected tree or is it moved from a larger pot to the smaller pot?
Oh, this is a collected tree, and it was, you know, it was probably worked on while it was still in the ground and hacked up and whatnot. This one just had some really interesting features. I mean, if you look at the trunk, it's really got a lot of movement a lot earlier than most of the ones that you see. Sometimes you get very straight trunks. Now, when you're taking these, a lot of times they're in a row so that their root systems are commingled with other trees that are in that particular line. And a lot of times what you're going to end up doing is you're going to be digging up one and then have to dig up the one next to it to kind of free up some of these roots and cut them out. What I would suggest doing, if you possibly can, is if you have the opportunity, water the trees maybe a couple of days before you actually go and do the collecting. You're going to find it's easier to get them out, and you're going to get a little bit of water back into the system of the tree and give it a chance so that it can be collected without harming the entire thing. If you're doing it at this time of year, again, you're dead in the middle of summer, so I don't know how you guys are, but you've got to be in the upper 90s or something. It's a rough time for anything to be taken out of the ground. So make sure that you have them hydrated and ready to go. And like I say, in the middle of the summer, I've taken some and I've got most of them to take. So that's a good time to do it. Okay, what I do is sometimes I'll take a pike with me and something that I can use as a fulcrum. And once I get to the edge of where they're growing, because they're usually in some kind of a hedge kind of a situation. If it's against a piece of concrete, like a sidewalk or something like that, you can actually make a fulcrum of maybe a 4x4 or something that you bring with you on the concrete and just pop them out like teeth. I mean, you know, sometimes they'll come out fairly easily. If you're digging them, then using not a bar, but a root hook or something along those lines to kind of loosen the areas, and you'll get it down to a certain point. On older trees that have been there forever, sometimes there are two root systems that are in there. There's the one that originally was with it that is farther down, and then because of the buildup of all the dead leaves and the dirt and everything else that gets in it, another root system above that starts to grow. So I would go down, take both of those root systems as far down as you can, and then you make your decision as to which level you're going to make your tree based on you know, the best features that you have in that particular thing. When I take them, I cut a lot of the growth up on top, but I'm going to keep major branches, and I want to keep some shoots. In other words, some green shoots on it, so that you can get you know, a flow of the energy still going through the tree, because you're going to take some roots. You're not just you know, cutting these things off at the base or something. You do have the possibility of getting those shoots to actually keep the tree alive while everything else is kind of in a recovery mode. And I would put these into a shaded area, probably under a tree or under shade cloth or something, where they aren't going to get direct sun. They normally would probably be able to take it, but when you're first taking it out of the ground, be cautious and make sure that you know, they're hydrated at all times. And I would use As far as soil is concerned, you can use a bonsai mix, but you can also use a lot of pumice and something that's going to aerate a little bit, because that helps to form the roots. There
Okay,
any
and
other questions about that?
does it require to be bare rooted right away, or you just keep the root ball as is and then use the pumice outside the root ball?
Oh, well, I'd mix the pumice in with whatever you're going to be using, something that's going to give it a little bit lighter and aerated type of thing, and yet will keep a little bit of moisture. So if you're going to an akadama thing, you could use that, 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 type of thing, where you have akadama and pumice and lava rock.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And I wouldn't be fertilizing them right off the bat. I'd give it a chance. There's probably the time at the point that you take it out, it's probably at its strongest. Anything that you collect is probably at its strongest, and it probably has enough energy to at least start the process without having any kind of fertilizer in it to boost it up. So I don't think you're going to need to do that.
Patty, do you want me to share your trees if I can?
Yes.
Okay. We'll see if this works. I have challenges with it too. So bear with me, guys. Oh, I got them. All right. So, Patty, go ahead and explain.
This is a cork bark oak that was about 6 feet tall when I bought it. And it was all weeping down, and I really liked it. But now that I've cut it off and I've got some of my new branches. This is about 3 years in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I can make a weeper out of it.
You could do that with wire.
Yeah, the ones that are sort of weeping down now, they're all wired.
Okay.
I guess my question is that too weird for an oak tree?
No, as a matter of fact, a lot of oak trees, most oak trees will grow out, especially if they're growing out in, say, a plane of some type, and they will grow up and out, and then they will spread out as far as they possibly can. And then at the tips, a lot of times the tips will actually start going down to the earth. Sometimes you don't see that because whatever's grazing on them eats them up to the point where they can't reach any farther. So that's really typical, as far as the weeping portion on the exterior of the tree. Now this one, I'm looking at the picture of it, and it looks like it's a long, kind of a heavy cork bark, and then everything seems to be coming off towards the top here, and then it kind of weeps down.
There are hefty branches, as you can see on the right side of it.
Okay.
And there's one that I'm growing out on the left side, but, and there's one hefty one in the back.
Okay, so what I would suggest as far as your weeping is concerned, that you don't make the weep all with one move. In other words, what you're going to do is you're going to create a series of arcs. And each one of those arcs is going to go a little bit farther down and maybe in a few different directions, but it's going to basically go down. It's going to cascade down as opposed to just go down as one big shoot.
Okay, and will I trim like some of these really big ones when they get the branch gets the size I want, and it starts drooping, look on the left-hand side, this one's too skinny right now, but when they start weeping, do I cut them off part way?
Okay, when they start, yeah. Okay.
And then each of the side branches, don't they go, they also go up and out and down, each of the little side branches?
Yeah, well, what happens is when you're creating this weeping thing, you're probably going to be going to a side shoot or an upward growing shoot that you can then wire in the next arc. and you bring that down, and then as it branches out to the side there, you take one of those side branches and you arc that down too, so that you get this cascade feel of having one arc on top of another arc and another arc and another arc
Right.
coming down into the tree. And so you're going to be cutting off probably the terminals, the lowest portions, in favor of
course.
something that's a side that you can bring down again.
Okay. Dodie, there's another picture. Can you?
I have two pictures
Yeah.
and they're both up. Do you see them both? I guess you
I
don't.
see
huh?
I see one picture.
Okay, now how do I do this then? Okay, bear with me. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share again. This is the backwards door. Which one?
I don't know that the second one shows better or not.
Is that the
Oh,
close-up view? Is that what you're talking about?
Okay.
That's the one. So on the left-hand side, I didn't have this tree turned so you could really see. There is some movement in there before you get to the top. But see those two really big branches that are coming out at the same spot? And
Okay,
the
I see.
right-hand side down at the bottom.
Yeah, down at the bottom on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, yeah.
Would you normally cut this one off? How do I get my pointer? The
Use
lower
your
one.
pointer. Use your pointer again.
Is this my pointer? Okay. Would I cut this one off?
No, the upward growing one, no.
No, the downward growing.
The downward growing one, I probably would take because it's coming out at the base.
Right. Okay, that's what I needed to know.
Yeah.
And this picture doesn't show as much of this foliage back here. Can you see my cursor dancing around?
Okay, do it
I
slow.
don't.
Oh,
I can
okay.
do my cursor, describe it.
Where is it?
Well,
Ooh.
I'm at the top right corner of the
Yeah,
picture.
that's it.
Oh, okay, got it. And my click on it? No.
Where do you want me to go? No, I have to do it. Tell me.
Oh, I see. Come down to here where you see that big bunch of
Down here?
right-hand side. If you're looking,
Right
my
here?
question is do I need to thin out more
Can you
branches?
annotate? Can you use that annotate?
Let me see.
I was gonna say, if Patty can use the annotate function, she can
She
show
can point to
exactly
it.
what she's talking about.
What? How do you
I
do?
can annotate, but I don't know where she wants. But let me see.
But she can do that too.
I know.
I don't know how.
Are you talking right there?
Yep.
That's what I thought.
Yep. Is that too much foliage in here? Do I need to
Branches?
thin more?
Well, okay, so you have the one below that, and then you have that one up above it. Is that, God, it's hard to see because there's some foliage, kind of obscuring
Yeah,
it.
that little bit in the front,
Yeah.
those are just side branches that I haven't done anything with. So they're just obscuring the view.
Yeah, well, like I was thinning out over here on this tree, and I'm still thinning out this tree. That's the kind of thing that you're going to have to do in certain circumstances on this particular tree so that you don't crowd things out. You got to give it enough room so that you can get that movement. If you have too many branches in there, it's just going to look like a muddled area. So what you need to do is be able to distinguish between the branches that are going to be drooping for you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You bet.
All righty. And we're back to you. Let's see. Any other questions? Anybody? Let's see.
Okay, I'm thinning out for the most part. I haven't put any wire on because I don't really need to at this point. And it may take us into the wee hours of the morning. And I'd be the only one that's still awake for this. So
I don't think we're expecting to have a finished tree.
no.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah,
But
I
you've
want
given a lot of good information.
Let's just look at, because I've now got a little bit more of the foliage and whatnot that's coming off of here. And you can see underneath some of these branches and whatnot. Let's see if we're getting a picture of it that you can see. It's still a little bit, it's still thicker over on this particular side. And I'm going to take off a couple other little branches so that I can take out some of that density that you see right there. This one that I said I was going to keep, well, so much for that.
You might need to shift your camera.
Oh, that's good. It's just I've changed my assessment of what it's doing.
Now, Kitty, did you want to ask your question now?
So a lot of foliage inside here, and I want to clean that up. This is actually going to be an attractive little tree once we get it all squared away. Take out some of these upper portions.
JT, can you move your camera a little bit? It's
Yes.
move it. There you go. That's perfect.
Okay, that's better.
Okay. Kitty, did you have a question, Kitty? If so, go ahead and raise your hand or unmute yourself. Any other members have questions about their trees or anything that JT has presented, which has been extremely thorough? We will be emailing out his keynote presentation to our membership, so you'll have that to refer to as well.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions down the line, or you can always contact me. And I'm happy to answer what you got. I guess one of the things I wanted to get was that you can have an awful lot of fun with these particular trees. They're great to work with. And let's see if that's getting a little,
That's good.
I turn it one way and it goes the other way. Okay, so that's getting a little bit thinner. I can see a little bit too much up on top here. Here's what I cut back to. There was one that was going to come up right up in here. I was just too far out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just leave a couple of leaves up in this area because the upper portion is going to get most of the growth anyway. We know that from almost any species that we're dealing with. And I'm going to just thin that out so that it isn't quite so high over here.
I have a question from someone. They asked, when and how will you carve the main trunk stub?
Okay, I'll probably make a form instead of having something where I just make it into a little round mound. I'll probably reduce it down and maybe even put a hollow into it as if, it was rotting out and whatnot. I will remove the flatness of the, let's see if I can move this a little bit. I will remove.
That looks good.
This is very flat right here, this whole area, because it was a saw cut going straight across. And what I'm going to do is probably put an indentation in it so it goes down a little bit, and then I'll eat away some of the outside of this so it doesn't look so big. It's not a huge piece like it is now. It will then actually look a little bit more, in scale to what's going on with this tree. You can notice that there's a neat little feature right here. Let me just,
there you go.
Okay, so this is, from my viewpoint, this is a little dimple in here. And anytime you have a dimple or you have a little crease or anything like that, you want to accentuate that type of thing and really draw attention to it. So I will use that in how I construct and actually carve this out. I'll probably be using a Dremel. This particular species, any of these boxwoods are extremely hard. They used to make chops out of these things. They will hold a design. They're very, you can do a lot of detail carving on them, and they will hold up over time. They're really pretty spectacular. Now, it does break down when you put water on it. It's got sun, and it goes back to water and sun and whatnot. But it will last a lot longer than almost any of the other woods that are not resinous. So it's good stuff to be working on. Okay, so I'm going to move this back just a little bit so we get the top of the tree. Okay, so now we're really looking at this, and it's coming out as a real tree. I mean, you're getting lots of movement in this trunk, which is what I wanted to get. The trunk that I cut off was absolutely straight going up. It was just a real mess. As a matter of fact, we were going to try and do something really kind of cool, where I was going to have this thing sitting up here. We discussed doing this, having it like this, and then, oh, and by the way, we just took that away. But the drama of the moment, I had to get working on the tree, so I had to take it off. Anyway, so we missed that. So basically, this is where your tree is going. The basic form of this tree is about where we want it. You have an apex up in here. This can grow out, but I want each of these branches to come out to the point where you can't even tell where the apex, you know, it's not coming from one point. It's actually a group effort to make a nice apex on these, which is typical of oak trees and even boxwoods. When you notice that they're growing, they will tend to arc out, and you don't have a big solid piece that goes up as the top. It just bifurcates, and it just blends into a lot of movement up there. I think if that's the last question, we're about where we have to be on this tree.
I think it looks great. Last chance for questions. I think you did such a good job, JT. A lot of good information, very thorough, very well prepared.
Okay, well, thank you for it, and we had a good time, and thank you for all the effort that you put in to help me get.
Oh, it's all great.
To go.
It's all good. Thank you so much, JT.
Okay.
Everybody, thank you for attending. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, and stay healthy and safe.
Okay, Jody, and same thing with you, Renee. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, JT. It's a great program. I have several boxwoods, and hopefully I can do a little bit better with them now.
Excellent. Okay. I guess we're there.
All right. Oh, hang on. I got one new message. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
I sign up. Oh. Kitty does not know if these, she has some pictures, and she doesn't know how to share them. Can she email them to you? She didn't know if it's a boxwood or not. Would that be okay?
Yeah, yeah. If she wants to, she can email them to me. It's jtbonsai@gmail.com. And if she'll try to be as explicit in the information that she gives, because again, I'm going to be looking at a picture.
What was that email?
I'm putting it in chat. jtbonsai at gmail. Verify that I'm right.
Yes, jtbonsai@gmail.com.
I've got pictures from 2004 when I collected it to now.
Cool.
Is there? Do you know how I could share it? How I could put it on?
Can you? Well, I think, can you just email them? Do you know how to email pictures?
Yeah.
Okay, email them to JT.
Yeah, and I'll respond to, you know, just I'll just give you what I can come up with based on the picture.
Good.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks everybody for attending. It's been a very productive session. Sure appreciate it.
It's really came out nice.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, JT. Great job.
Good night.
Jody. Bye-bye now.
Good night.
JT, it
See
was
you.
wonderful.
Thank you, Fong.
Good night,
Thank you for coming, Fong.
Whoever's out there, good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.